So, Donald Trump is reportedly hitting the panic button after a bombshell investigation revealed that his administration is allegedly sitting on a mountain of evidence that could change everything we know about the Jeffrey Epstein case. And we aren't just talking about a few folders. We're talking about a staggering 100 million files and tens of terabytes of data that have been kept under lock and key. The fallout from this discovery has sent shockwaves through Washington, leaving the president facing a double-barreled crisis, a potential cover-up scandal, and approval ratings that are currently in free fall. Welcome to RS Briefing. What triggered this sudden firestorm? It all centers on a devastating report from Channel 4 News, which alleges that despite the public outcry for transparency, the Trump administration has only released a measly 2% of the total Epstein-related data. According to investigators who have tracked the paper trail, millions of documents detailing the inner workings of one of the most high-profile criminal networks in history remain hidden from the public eye. This isn't just another political conspiracy theory. We're looking at a formal accusation of a systematic effort to suppress historical truth. But here's where the situation turns truly dire for the White House. The pressure isn't just coming from the media or political opponents. A federal judge, originally appointed by George W. Bush, has just issued a scathing ruling, using the words of George Orwell himself to describe the administration's tactics. When you have conservative appointed judges comparing the current White House to the dystopian world of 1984, you know the political landscape has reached a breaking point. Today, we're breaking down the leaked details of these hidden files, the staggering new poll numbers that have Trump's team scrambling, and why even some of his former allies are starting to ask the one question the administration doesn't want to answer. What exactly is the president trying to hide? To understand why this has caused such a massive panic within the administration, we have to look at the sheer scale of what is allegedly being withheld. According to the investigative reporting from Channel 4 News, we aren't just looking at a few missing emails. We are talking about tens of terabytes of data, estimated at over 100 million individual files linked to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. But here's the kicker. Out of that massive mountain of evidence, only about 2% has been made public. Think about that for a second. In one of the most high-profile criminal cases in American history, a case involving international sex trafficking, high-level political connections, and the exploitation of minors, 98% of the information remains hidden from the American people. This isn't just a slow rollout of documents. According to sources familiar with the data, this looks like a deliberate wall of silence. When the Epstein files were first promised to be unsealed, there was a sense that justice was finally coming for the victims. But the reality has been far different. Analysts who have reviewed the released portions of the data say the 2% we've seen is largely fluff, redundant court filings, and information already in the public domain. The meat of the investigation, the flight logs, the financial records, and the potentially incriminating correspondence is allegedly what makes up the 98% that is still under lock and key. The administration's defense has generally been to cite ongoing investigations or privacy concerns, but that excuse is wearing thin, even with Trump's traditional allies. This wasn't supposed to be about protecting the powerful. It was supposed to be about transparency. But as more details leak out about the volume of data being withheld, the narrative is shifting from protecting the process to protecting the players. Legal experts are now pointing out that withholding this much data doesn't just hinder public knowledge, it actively obstructs the path to justice for the survivors. At RS Briefing, we've seen plenty of political controversies, but the scale of this data gap is unlike anything we've witnessed. When you're sitting on 100 million files and you only let the public see a fraction of a fraction, you aren't being transparent. You're managing a narrative. And as we're about to see, the judicial system is finally starting to lose its patience with these tactics. But here's where the rubber meets the road. This isn't just a media firestorm or a series of leaked documents. It has officially reached the federal courts. And the response from the bench has been nothing short of historic. In a recent federal ruling, Judge Cynthia Rufe, an appointee of George W. Bush, issued a scathing critique of how the Trump administration has handled sensitive information. Now, why does it matter that a Bush appointee is the one speaking out? Because, as we've seen at RS Briefing, when judges appointed by the president's own party begin to push back, it signals that a constitutional line has been crossed. Judge Rufe didn't just offer a standard legal disagreement. She went further, explicitly accusing the administration of attempting to distort historical truth. In a moment that has sent shockwaves through the legal community, she invoked George Orwell's dystopian masterpiece, 1984. Think about the gravity of that. A federal judge is essentially telling the White House that their tactics mirror a fictional regime where the truth is whatever the government says it is. The implication is clear. By withholding 98% of the Epstein files, the administration isn't just managing data, they are actively preventing the American public from knowing the real history of these crimes. According to legal analysts, this is a direct hit to the administration's credibility. Judge Rufe's ruling suggests that the government's refusal to release these files isn't based on national security or legal protocols, but rather a desire to control the narrative surrounding Epstein's associates. When a judge accuses a sitting administration of trying to rewrite history, it's no longer just a political debate, it's a crisis of the rule of law. The court is essentially saying, we see what you're doing, and it's not just wrong, it's dangerous. This ruling has provided a massive legal opening for investigators and victims advocates who have been fighting for years to get these 100 million files into the light. But as the legal walls close in, the political walls are also beginning to crumble. Epstein isn't just facing a battle in the courtroom, he's facing a massive collapse in the one area that usually keeps him safe, the polls. But the legal pressure is only half the story. While the courts are sounding the alarm over the Epstein files, the American public is delivering a verdict of its own. And if you're in the Trump camp, the numbers coming out right now are nothing short of a political nightmare. According to the latest data analyzed by CNN's Harry Enten, Donald Trump's approval ratings have officially cratered to new second-term lows. We aren't just talking about a minor dip. These numbers are significantly lower than where he stood during his first term, and in a comparison that has to sting for the White House, he is now trailing behind where Joe Biden stood at this exact same point in his presidency. But here is where the situation gets truly dangerous for Trump's re-election prospects. When you dig into the crosstabs of this polling, the most staggering decline isn't among his critics, it's among independent voters. As we've discussed here on RS Briefing, independents are the canary in the coal mine for any presidency. They are the voters who decide elections, and right now, they are fleeing in droves. According to Enten's analysis, the combination of the administration's handling of sensitive investigations and the constant state of internal chaos has left middle-of-the-road voters feeling exhausted and disillusioned. This isn't just a partisan squabble anymore. When independent voters, the very people Trump needs to maintain his hold on power, start to view the administration's actions as an Orwellian distortion of the truth, the path to victory narrows significantly. The data suggests a growing trust gap. For months, the administration has tried to frame every controversy as a witch hunt, but that defense seems to be losing its punch. As more reports surface about those 100 million hidden files, and as federal judges call out the administration for lack of transparency, the witch hunt narrative is being replaced by a much more damaging one, a cover-up narrative. Trump has always relied on his base to carry him through political storms, but the base alone isn't enough to win a general election. With his numbers hitting historic lows and his support among independents evaporating, the president is finding himself in a defensive crouch. And as we're about to see, this political vulnerability is starting to bleed into other areas, specifically his ability to manage the nation's infrastructure and his increasingly aggressive tactics for fundraising. But the chaos in Washington isn't just confined to classified archives and the shadows of the Epstein investigation. We are seeing a parallel battle play out over the very foundation of the country, our infrastructure. And nowhere is that battle more intense than the fight over the Gateway Rail Project. For those who don't know, the Gateway Project is a massive, multi-billion-dollar plan to repair and expand the rail tunnels between New York and New Jersey. It is arguably the most critical infrastructure project in the United States, keeping the entire Northeast corridor, and by extension, the national economy, moving. But despite its bipartisan support and dire necessity, the Trump administration has repeatedly thrown up roadblocks. Why would a president block a project that engineers and economists say is vital for national security and economic stability? According to critics, this is part of a broader pattern we've discussed here on RS Briefing, using federal resources as a bargaining chip for political loyalty. By stalling the Gateway Project, the administration isn't just fighting a budget battle. They are holding a knife to the throat of the blue state economies that have been most vocal in their opposition to the president. But the Gateway dispute is only one piece of the puzzle. As the legal walls close in and the polling numbers hit second-term lows, the Trump campaign is shifting into a state of financial desperation. We're seeing a massive surge in aggressive fundraising tactics that some experts say border on the predatory. Reports indicate that the administration is leaning harder than ever on its donor base, using increasingly alarmist language to extract every possible dollar. This isn't just about standard campaign ads, it's about a massive infrastructure of small dollar donors who are being told that the president is the only thing standing between them and a deep state takeover. This creates a vicious cycle. The more the administration feels cornered by the Epstein file revelations and the judicial rebukes, the more they lean into these infrastructure wars and aggressive fundraising. It's a strategy built on division rather than governance. But as the president doubles down on this us versus them mentality, high-profile leaders in the states are stepping up to offer a very different vision of leadership. And one of the most prominent voices in this pushback is Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who is now framing this entire crisis as a fundamental failure of the administration to protect the most vulnerable. And this brings us to one of the most powerful voices in this unfolding drama, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. In a recent high-profile interview, Shapiro didn't just critique the Trump administration's policies. He attacked the very foundation of their leadership style. Shapiro, a former attorney general who has spent his career navigating the complexities of the legal system, is drawing a sharp line in the sand. He contrasts his own approach, which he describes as being rooted in empathy, the rule of law, and a relentless focus on victim advocacy, with what he characterizes as the Trump administration's fundamental failure to protect the survivors of the Epstein network. According to Shapiro, when an administration sits on 98% of the evidence in a case this massive, they aren't just failing a political test, they are failing a moral one. He argues that by withholding these files, the government is essentially silencing the victims all over again. This contrast is exactly why Trump is reportedly in a state of panic. It's one thing to fight a political opponent, it's another to fight a narrative of moral negligence. As Shapiro points out, the rule of law doesn't mean protecting the powerful from scrutiny. It means ensuring that the truth, no matter how ugly, is brought into the light. So, here is the deal. We have a bipartisan group of critics, a federal judge invoking George Orwell, and a mountain of 100 million files that the public has yet to see. Trump's approval ratings are at historic lows, and even independent voters are beginning to pull away as the cover-up allegations gain steam. This isn't just about the 2024 election anymore. It's about whether the American justice system can be used as a tool for personal and political protection. If an administration can successfully bury tens of terabytes of data involving a global criminal network, then the very concept of transparency in our government is under threat. Keep an eye on this. As more legal challenges are filed to unseal that remaining 98% of the Epstein data, and as leaders like Josh Shapiro continue to hammer home the message of victim advocacy, the pressure on the White House will only intensify. The 100 million files are out there. The only question is, how much longer can they stay hidden? The stakes for the country and for the survivors seeking justice have never been higher. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.